Look around you. Society is full of grown men with teenagers' minds. They chase dreams but build nothing real. They want success but run from hard work. These immature men destroy everything they come across because they simply refuse to accept the harsh truth that real power comes only from manning up. We have all encountered somewhere in our life this type of man that is full of great ideas and has big dreams for the future. You can see a special look in his eyes that tells you he believes he is meant for great things. He often talks about amazing projects he wants to start, yet he is stuck on the promise of what he could achieve, but he never actually produces any real results. And he always has a list of excuses ready for why things go wrong. He'll say it wasn't the right time, or he was working with the wrong people. He might even claim that people just don't understand his unique vision yet. This person could be a friend you grew up with, or maybe your younger brother. In some cases, he might be your partner or even your father. He is someone who, even though he gets older, never seems to change or grow up. You see a grown man who continues to behave like a child. His feelings are often messy and all over the place, and he consistently runs away from his responsibilities. He is always looking for an escape and avoids taking any real blame for his failures. It's even possible that a small part of you still holds on to the hope that he is going to change into a better man. And this particular pattern of thinking is often described as the man-child syndrome. This idea points to the type of immature man who avoids growing up, someone who seems to live in a constant state of preparation. It is as if he is always on the verge of starting his real life, but somehow never truly begins it. He can be very attractive because of his youthful energy, his creative ideas, and his spontaneous personality. However, there is a significant downside hiding just beneath this attractive surface. This is his complete inability to manage the normal responsibilities and challenges of the real world. The man-child believes that life should simply adjust to his personal desires. He fully expects other people to solve the problems for him that he is unwilling to face on his own. He spends his time dreaming about an absolutely perfect partner, an ideal job, and a life without any problems. And as soon as the real world fails to live up to these high expectations, he chooses to escape. He will suddenly cut off communication, quit his job or end the relationship, and go right back into the familiar cycle of daydreaming. And in his mind, he is far too special to accept the predictable nature of a normal life. But the honest truth is that he is paralyzed by the intense fear of failure, the pain of disappointment, and the simple act of growing up. And anyone who has ever tried to support a person like this understands just how draining it can be. You feel completely worn out from offering advice that is completely disregarded and from giving support that is ultimately wasted. It's a tiring experience to try and push someone forward who deep down has no desire to change their position at all. And what's even more difficult, the immature man often makes you feel as though you are the one to blame. He might suggest you are the problem for expecting too much, for pushing him to grow, or for not being content to live in a constant state of almost. However, it is important to speak about the reality of his situation. The simple truth is that this kind of man remains completely stuck. He is trapped inside a dream of being independent. But this dream has actually turned into a prison built from his own fears and his refusal to grow up. And if he doesn't wake up from this, he will find himself growing old without ever having truly lived his life in a meaningful way. This is not meant to be an attack. It is offered as a chance for serious reflection. If you are still engaged with this, it is likely because a part of you recognizes this pattern. You might be seeing it in someone close to you, or you may even recognize parts of it within yourself. The path of the man-child does not have to end in a state of never moving forward. However, a change is only possible when the truth of the situation is faced head-on. The man-child is not just a simple category of personality. Instead, it should be seen as a deep-seated pattern, a kind of mental programming that operates subconsciously in the minds of many men. This pattern is frequently mistaken for positive qualities such as having a lot of charm, acting impromptu, or possessing a truly free-spirited nature. However, underneath this attractive surface, there is a much more significant problem hiding. This issue is a strong, almost instinctive resistance to the idea of growing up. This pattern has been observed in countless individuals and has been documented in various stories throughout history. The immature man appears as someone who refuses to leave the comfortable paradise of his childhood. He wants to stay in that safe, protected space, like an emotional safety net provided by a parent, where all his needs are met and every problem is solved for him. As a result, he lives his life constantly waiting for an amazing future that is always just around the corner but never actually happens. In his own mind, he often sees himself as a person with endless potential, as if he is the uniquely gifted one who is destined for greatness. Yet, when it comes to the practical matters of daily life, he consistently fails to take control and be responsible for his own path, and you have likely seen this behavior up close. Just think about men who frequently switch jobs, always on the hunt for something that feels more important or perfect. Think of those who start new projects with a huge amount of enthusiasm, only to abandon them as soon as they encounter the first real challenge. You might also recognize the men who seem to fall in love with great intensity, but then disappear the moment the relationship begins to demand genuine commitment and maturity. These are often the same individuals who enjoy discussing complex ideas like spirituality and personal freedom, but struggle with basic responsibilities like paying a bill on time or honoring a commitment for longer than a few months. And this type of behavior is not the result of a person being unintelligent or without natural ability. In fact, the man-child is often very bright, sensitive, and shows a great deal of potential. He tends to have a very deep connection to his creative side, feeling frequent bursts of inspiration and having a powerful imagination. However, this very strength is what keeps him living in a world of ideas, allowing him to avoid the heavy responsibilities of real life. This immature man wants to fly high without ever having to build his own wings. He desires love but shies away from any real commitment. He dreams of success but is not willing to put in the hard work. He wants all the rewards of being an adult without ever having to pay the price of growing up. And naturally, when the world does not simply give him these things, he reacts with anger and defiance. He will blame the system, his family, or even life itself, but he will never look for the fault within himself. A key problem for the man-child is his poor relationship with time. He is always living in the future, constantly waiting for something else to happen first, like finding the perfect idea, the ideal partner, or just the right moment to start. He exists in a world of someday, and because of this, he is not truly living. He is simply surviving, fueled by dreams that eventually stop inspiring him and become heavy burdens. But it is also important to see the other side of this situation, because even though he is immature, the man-child has a positive energy that cannot be ignored. He can be the source of youthful spirit, endless creative imagination, and the amazing ability to reinvent life and see it in new ways. The problem is not the inner boy that exists inside the man. The problem starts when that boy completely takes over his entire life. So this brings us to the next thing we need to understand. What happens when the positive light of the man-child begins to fade and his darker shadow takes control? There is a certain magnetic quality to the man-child. He seems so light and acts in a very spontaneous way. He often speaks with the beauty of a poet, dreams with the scale of a great thinker, and appears to live completely outside the normal flow of time. This is a man who does not follow the usual rules, refuses to accept any kind of label, and never seems to cling to anything for too long. For many people, this is an incredibly fascinating way to be. He gives the impression of being completely free, and who wouldn't want that kind of freedom in a world so full of obligations, commitments, and repetitive empty routines? However, this is precisely where the trap is hidden. This so-called freedom is actually an illusion. It is a carefully constructed disguise that he uses to hide from the one thing he is most afraid of, which is reality itself. The man-child is not truly free at all. He is more like a person on the run. He is constantly running from pain, from the possibility of failure, from rejection, from feelings of frustration, and from the simple fact that time is passing. He is escaping the heavy burden of being responsible for the direction of his own life. And with every single choice he manages to avoid, every decision he puts off for another day, and every responsibility he passes on to someone else, he only strengthens the walls of his personal prison, which he has disguised as his independence. And you have probably seen this behavior up close. He might tell you he doesn't want a normal career path because he feels he is destined for something much more important. The real story, however, is that he is deeply afraid of predictable routines, of having a boss, and of long-term commitment. He will likely say that he doesn't want to be tied down to one person because relationships feel like prisons to him. But what is really happening is that he is terrified of giving up control, of allowing someone to see the real him, and of being expected to answer for his actions. He might claim that he hates rules, but when you look closer, he simply does not have the skills to cope with limits. The freedom he advertises to the world is, in truth, an immature refusal to face the difficult parts of life. He wants to be forever young, lighthearted, and untouched by problems. And to achieve this, he believes he must stay in continuous motion, floating around like a balloon that is carried by the wind. But time does not stop for anyone. And sooner or later, the real world always shows up and demands for a price to be paid. The man-child lives his life as if he is caught in a dream, constantly floating somewhere between the sky and the solid ground. He actively avoids coming back down to reality, refusing to plant his feet firmly and build a stable life. This immature man shows no interest in managing the everyday practical details that life requires. However, we all know that without a solid foundation, nothing significant can ever develop. Similarly, without putting in real work, nothing truly wonderful can blossom. And without facing difficult experiences, a person can never truly change and grow. And many people think freedom means having no limitations, but real freedom is actually the power to thoughtfully decide which people and goals are worthy of your dedication. The man-child, however, refuses to make these important choices. Instead, he simply runs away. And through this constant escape, he doesn't just damage his own future, he also slowly but surely causes deep pain to the people who try to love and support him. At the very start, everything about him seems wonderful and exciting. The man-child gives off a special kind of energy that naturally draws people to him, making them feel inspired and completely caught up in his world. He acts with a lot of passion and excitement, and his unpredictable nature is very appealing. However, after a while, that attractive sparkle starts to dim. The qualities that once seemed positive begin to change for the worse. What used to feel like a carefree attitude soon becomes a pattern of him simply not being around. What first looked like deep emotional feeling later changes into emotional instability. And the lifestyle that seemed to represent total freedom is eventually shown for what it truly is, a way to escape from responsibility. It is at this stage that the darker side of this immature man starts to surface. This negative part of his character begins to act in quiet, tricky ways. It shows itself through small, destructive actions in his everyday life. For example, he starts forgetting important plans, he doesn't meet his deadlines, and his finances become a complete mess. He might suddenly change his mind about big decisions or break the promises he has made. Yet, he explains all these actions with a kind of beautiful story he tells himself and others. He will say things like, "I'm just not ready for this," or "I don't want to do something that doesn't feel right," or "I simply need more time." The reality, though, is much more direct and difficult to face. The simple truth is that he is scared. He is afraid of the idea of growing up. He's terrified of making a mistake, and he worries about being judged by other people or just being a normal, average person. Because of these fears, he doesn't even realize that he is actively ruining anything in his life that demands adult responsibility. This continuous pattern of self-destruction has a negative impact on all the people in his life. For his romantic partners, there is the deep pain of being in love with a man who seems wonderful at his core, but is completely unreliable in his actions. He might tell his partner he loves her, but then he will vanish without a word. He will talk about wanting to build a future together, yet he never takes any real action to make it happen. His family members often feel a growing sense of frustration as they watch him throw away his natural talents, his intelligence, and the many good opportunities that come his way. His friends also become exhausted from constantly trying to help someone who seems forever stuck in a loop of almost achieving things but never quite getting there. Underneath all these behaviors, there is an overwhelming feeling of being stuck. The man-child seems completely unable to make any real progress, as if he is caught in a phase of being a teenager emotionally, a phase that never seems to conclude. Similar to other classic personality patterns, the negative side of the man-child is fueled by thoughts and feelings he isn't even aware of. He genuinely does not see that he is the one ruining his own life. Even more concerning, he starts to believe that everyone else is the source of his problems. He begins to blame the world around him, calling it dull, too strict, and always trying to control him. From his point of view, people who have grown up and become responsible adults are like traitors who have betrayed the ideal of living a free life. As a result of this thinking, he pushes people away and spends more and more time alone. He does this because he truly thinks he is staying loyal to his unique personality, but in reality, he is just letting his own fear completely control him. But true personal growth doesn't happen by only focusing on our positive qualities. Instead, it comes from bravely understanding the more difficult, hidden parts of ourselves. This is particularly true for the man-child, whose negative side should not be ignored but must be directly confronted. The real problem is not that an adult man has a youthful spirit inside of him. The issue begins when this inner child takes control, becoming a dominant force that ruins his opportunity to experience a complete and authentic adult life. This destructive pattern often has very deep origins because the immature man is very seldom on his own in this struggle, and supporting him, almost always, is a quiet but powerful presence that encourages his behavior and keeps him locked in this stage of life. This presence is what we can call the symbolic mother figure. It is important to explore the role of this hidden relationship, including how his emotional reliance on this mother figure keeps the man-child in a state of immaturity, and why finding the strength to break this connection is his only real path to freedom. An immature man does not simply appear without a reason. Looking closely, we often find a quiet but influential person in the background of nearly every man who resists growing up. This person can be very loving, yet at the same time, her influence can feel suffocating. She shields him from life's challenges, but in doing so, she also stops him from ever learning to handle them himself. In psychology, this powerful role is often referred to as the mother figure. When her influence becomes too strong and overwhelming, she changes into a more destructive force. Instead of nurturing his life and growth, she ends up trapping him. Sometimes, this mother figure is his actual biological mother, an overprotective parent who managed every detail of his life. She was the one who never allowed him to fail and was always there to catch him. But without realizing it, she was the one who kept him from becoming a self-reliant individual. However, this role can also be a symbolic one, such as a romantic partner who acts more like a caretaker, a devoted grandmother, or any woman who offers protection, support, and comfort, while unconsciously asking for his unending loyalty in return. As a result, the man-child starts to look for something specific in his relationships with women. He isn't searching for an equal partner to share his life with, but rather for a replacement mother figure. He desires someone who will understand all his needs without making any demands, who will accept him completely without ever challenging him, and who will offer him endless support. This kind of mutually dependent connection can feel very safe and comfortable, but it is also incredibly damaging in the long run because it protects him from ever having to face the real world. As long as he is being taken care of, he feels no pressure to take action, no need to make important decisions, and no reason to mature. He effectively stays stuck in the mindset of a child, constantly expecting the women in his life to handle the very things he will not deal with himself. The symbolic mother figure also gets caught in this unhealthy dynamic. She often thinks that she is being helpful and loving, but the truth is that she is contributing to a harmful cycle of emotional dependency that ultimately drains the life and energy from both of them. So the most significant problem that can happen is when a mother does not allow her child to grow up on an emotional level. This means that while the person gets older on the outside, their inner world stays undeveloped and childlike, always looking for someone to provide comfort instead of learning to stand on their own 2 feet. This difficult situation becomes even more serious when the man-child starts having relationships. He tends to fall in love very quickly and creates a perfect, idealized image of his partner. He then puts unrealistic pressure on her, acting as if she is supposed to fix all the emptiness inside him that he won't even admit is there. However, as soon as the relationship requires real connection, commitment, or taking on responsibility, he runs away. He creates distance, ruins the connection, or even worse, he blames the other person for the problems because, deep down, he never actually wanted a partner. What he really wanted was a mother figure pretending to be a lover. So to change this pattern, a person must go through some pain. It demands a separation from this way of living. It means having to cut the emotional connection to that childish state. But it is this very difficult break that truly begins the journey of becoming your own person. Growing up certainly hurts, but refusing to grow up ends up hurting much more in the long run. And sooner or later, a point comes in life when the pretend act starts to fall apart. Dreams that didn't come true begin to feel very heavy. Moreover, the history of failed relationships leaves behind emotional scars. A life that once seemed full of endless possibilities now starts to feel much more limited. And at that point, the man who is still controlled by the man-child mentality is forced to look at himself in the mirror and finally ask, how much longer can I keep living my life as if I have all the time in the world? This is the turning point. It is the moment when the pain of staying the same becomes stronger than the fear of finally growing up. However, anyone who believes that becoming mature is a simple and easy process is completely mistaken. Becoming a complete and true individual is like an emotional birth, and just like any other kind of birth, it is an experience filled with pain, struggle, and the symbolic death of the person you used to be. Therefore, the first important step is to face the breakdown of your personal fantasies. This involves coming to terms with the fact that life will continue to move forward, whether you feel you are ready for it or not. You must accept that a perfect moment will never arrive, and you have to understand that no one is coming along to rescue you from your challenges. This process helps you to recognize that the real world is not an unfriendly or threatening place. It is in fact the only setting where anything truly authentic can ever be experienced. It means realizing that growing up is not a betrayal of your true self. On the contrary, it is the very act of building that self. To do this properly, however, you must first allow yourself to grieve. This includes grieving for the idealized, childish version of yourself, the immature man who never faced real problems. It also means grieving for the life you once imagined you would have, for the promises that were not kept, and most significantly, for the idea that someone would always be there to take care of you. So letting go of the man-child within you does not require you to crush your creativity, your cheerful spirit, or your capacity for dreaming. It simply means that you can no longer use this childish part of your personality as an excuse to avoid dealing with life. The goal is to allow that youthful side of you to keep existing, but now with the mature adult firmly in charge. Because adulthood and maturity demand that you build a solid foundation, create structure, and act with consistency. It means finding the courage to say no when running away would be the easier choice. It involves honoring your commitments even when you long for more freedom. It is about working with complete focus even when you do not feel inspired. It means remaining fully present and engaged in your relationships long after the perfect illusion you first had has disappeared. In the end, it is about trading the short-lived thrill of something new for the profound, life-altering power that comes from true and lasting continuity. And herein lies the real secret. When the immature man finally becomes a part of the mature man, that youthful part of him doesn't just go away. Instead, it changes into something new. It becomes the wellspring of his creativity, his ability to dream big, and his gut feelings. However, this energy is now guided by a strong and grown-up mind that can actually take action and make things happen in the real world. This is what it means to be truly reborn as a man. It happens when the man-child stops avoiding the challenges of reality and instead begins to build a life within it. But this change is not a simple one, and it won't happen all by itself. So many men who reach this stage in their lives feel completely lost and tired, with no idea where they should even begin. They understand that a change is necessary. They sense that the time for being a boy in their mind is over, but they don't know how to start taking control of their own lives. It's possible you have noticed this kind of behavior in a friend or family member. Or maybe you have related to everything that has been said, and there is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of for feeling that way. Not at all. This is because every one of us, in some way, feels the pull to stay like children in a world that asks us to be adults. We have all tried to get out of some responsibility. We have all wished for an easy path, and we have all hoped that life would just be comfortable without us having to do the hard work. But the truth is both simple and harsh. Life doesn't wait for you. It makes demands, it has requirements, and it will test you. And sooner or later, you will have to make a choice. Either stay stuck in a fantasy world of what could be, or finally step into a real life of achievement and satisfaction. So making this journey is only possible when you make the choice to grow up. Not when you feel like it, and not when the time is perfect. But when you bravely decide that it is time to stop running away. Because if a person doesn't face their personal struggles, they will keep running into those same problems over and over again in life. The man-child is exactly one of these personal struggles. It's a problem that often disguises itself as wanting freedom, being authentic, or feeling like a misunderstood genius, but what it really does is weaken your foundations and stop you from building anything meaningful in your life. This issue won't just go away by itself. You have to confront it, admit that it's there, make it a part of your mature self, and most importantly, decide to be stronger than it is. Maturity is what happens when you stop hoping someone else will rescue you and you begin to rescue yourself. It's when you understand that responsibility isn't a cage, but the road to real strength. It's when you realize that real freedom isn't about doing anything you feel like. Instead, it is about having the inner strength and discipline to choose to do what is truly important. So breaking free from this eternal childhood requires understanding what real masculine power actually looks like. It is not about being tough or loud or aggressive. True masculine strength shows up in discipline, consistency, and the ability to build something lasting. While the eternal boy runs from pain and difficulty, the mature man walks directly into discomfort because he knows that is where growth happens. He understands that his word becomes his bond and that reliability creates respect. This type of man does not need to prove anything to anyone because his actions speak louder than any words ever could. He commits to his goals and follows through even when motivation fades. This is the fundamental difference between boys pretending to be men and men who have earned their place in the world through consistent action and unwavering dedication to their chosen path. The eternal boy lives in a world of endless excuses and constant justification for his failures. He blames his parents for not teaching him properly. He blames society for not giving him opportunities. He blames women for not understanding his sensitive nature. He blames his boss for not recognizing his talent. Every failure becomes someone else's fault, and every setback becomes proof that the world is against him. But the mature man takes full ownership of his results, whether they are good or bad. He understands that excuses are the enemy of progress and that blaming others only keeps him weak and dependent. When he fails, he examines what went wrong and adjusts his approach. When he succeeds, he builds on that success without getting arrogant. This ownership mindset transforms everything because it puts the power back in his hands where it belongs. The transformation from boy to man happens through consistent daily choices that most people avoid. It means getting up early even when you feel tired. It means keeping your promises even when it becomes inconvenient. It means facing difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. It means building something meaningful even when progress feels slow. It means staying committed to your goals even when others quit or make fun of your efforts. These small daily decisions create the foundation of masculine character and separate the men from the boys who talk big but deliver nothing. The eternal boy looks for shortcuts and easy wins, while the mature man understands that anything worth having requires sustained effort over time. This patience and persistence become his greatest weapons in a world full of people who give up at the first sign of resistance. And most men never make this transition because they are comfortable living in mediocrity. They would rather stay safe in their familiar patterns than risk the discomfort of real growth. They choose temporary pleasure over long-term success and wonder why their lives never improve. But for those who are ready to leave childhood behind, the path is clear. Stop making excuses and start taking action. Stop waiting for perfect conditions and start working with what you have. Stop seeking approval from others and start building your own standards. Stop running from responsibility and start embracing it as your pathway to power. The world needs mature men who can handle pressure, solve problems, and create value for others. The question becomes simple. Will you remain an eternal boy hiding behind excuses, or will you finally step up and claim your place as a man who builds, creates, and leads by example in everything he does?
Hello guys, this is the manager of this channel speaking. Don't forget to subscribe to help this channel grow.